Quick, you have 30 minutes to make dinner for you and your family. What are you gonna make? Got nothing? Well, don't worry, I got you. Now, these are 3 of my 30-minute go-tos, and some of them are just recipes you maybe didn't know could be made in under 30 minutes. It's kind of like you found a new shortcut through a neighborhood on your way to work, and now every day you're saving half the time and still getting to where you want to be. That makes sense? Cool. Now, first up, we have blackened fish tacos, which start out with just a nice piece of, well, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was, cod fillet. And technically speaking, you could use whatever white fish that you prefer. You could use cod, you could use halibut, you could use bronzino. Bronzino's white, right? I'm pretty sure. Just use whatever you prefer, because regardless, you're just gonna wanna cut them into about 1.5 inch thick sections, something like this, so that way they fit and nuzzle perfectly inside your taco. Now I would just like to preface that I'm prepping this for 2 servings because it's just me and my wife, but all these recipes today are super easy to scale up without adding a ton of extra time. Now for our seasoning, I'm gonna make that blend from scratch, but you obviously don't have to. If you wanna just use a pre-made blend, go for it, they work great. But I'm gonna start with about 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, half a tablespoon of cayenne, and if you don't like spicy, that's okay, just leave it out. 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. It's like one of the only ones I don't have a giant bottle of. A generous pinch of salt and black pepper. And there we have our seasoning mix. Now in most cases, I would just season the protein directly versus making the blend and then seasoning it. But fish is pretty delicate, so I really don't want to have to manhandle it any more than I have to. We'll start by drizzling it all in olive oil just so we have a nice bind. And then we'll just sprinkle on our seasoning, making sure we're coating the entirety of each piece. And then we'll just let these rest on the counter until we're ready to cook. And now we're just gonna make a very quick and easy slaw that really is pretty versatile because it can be as simple as just cabbage, or you can do just cabbage, red onion. You could put basically whatever you want into it. But in the effort of making sure this is as quick as possible, we're going to use a mandolin versus trying to cut it by hand. This will give us a consistent paper thin shred that really requires little to no effort. But you also could just use a knife because I understand not everybody has a mandolin. This takes 2 minutes longer and slightly less risk of losing a finger. Then we'll just move that to a bowl and we'll do the same thing to about 1/4 of a red onion. You really don't need that much. Now I'll just peel and then shred about half a carrot. Again, it's really personal preference. If you like a lot of carrot, use a lot of carrot. If you don't like carrot at all, then you probably shouldn't use carrot. But it's nice because it adds a little bit of color, it makes it pop a little bit, makes it feel a little, a little fancy, Makes it feel like you didn't just spend 30 minutes or less making these tacos. Makes it feel like, you put a lot of time into it. Trick those kids, I won't tell them. And I'll be honest, I had every intention of putting tomatoes in this, but looking at it now, I think it looks pretty solid and I'm just not feeling the tomatoes today. Just good because I really don't like tomatoes. Then we'll just give this a little pinch of salt, a few cranks of black pepper, a very light drizzle of olive oil. You really don't need it, but I like it. And we'll add a little bit of lime zest as well as the juice. Where'd my knife go? I grabbed a little one. Quite literally a sliver. And we'll just give this a light salad tossing. Freaking refreshing. You're gonna love it. And the last thing to do before we cook our fish, just make a simple sauce. I hope you were not as uncomfortable as I was. We're going in with about a cup of Mexican sour cream, half of an avocado, not even gonna look. Can I pick them or can I pick them? Actually, this one's not as good as I thought it was. So that's gonna be awkward. I would like to say it was better when I bought it, but it didn't go bad since yesterday, Just drop that in. Okay, now I fully understand that this is a little bit extra, but I've got this nice tiny jalapeno. I would like to torch it. You absolutely don't have to, but I just like a little bit of char. And for me, it's worth the extra 45 seconds. And now add in a few sprigs of cilantro, and don't be afraid to use the stems because the stems have a lot of flavor. And then we'll throw a little bit of lime zest and juice in as well. Again, we're just slivering here. Don't forget salt. And then we'll just blend it until it's nice and smooth. Good, you don't have to bottle yours up. I just like to because I like squeeze bottles, but however you want to store it. You know what would have been really good in this? Freaking garlic. Next time. Or if you decide to do it and you put garlic in it, let me know. I think it'll be good. Do it. And now all we have left to do is just cook. I'm gonna start off by just heating my tortillas in a pan, letting those get nice and warm, and then moving them over to our pillowcase. No, we agreed on this. It's not a pillowcase, to the sleeping bag. This part is arguably the slowest process because depending on how many tortillas you're heating up, like you're either gonna use a bigger pan and then you've gotta, wash a bigger pan, or you just take your time. So this is where you might go over on time. And now for our main event, the fish. You want your pan medium to medium high. Don't feel obligated to use stainless steel or cast iron or whatever. If you wanna use nonstick, use nonstick. I would much rather you use nonstick than you try the stainless steel. And then in this one instance where you're like trying to make dinner really fast, you ruin it and then you're really upset. I don't want that. This isn't the time to try stainless steel. But either way, you want this about medium high. Add in a nice squeeze of food lube or oil, but let's be honest, it's what it is. Make sure your pan is nice and evenly coated, and then just carefully lay down your fish. And the important part here is that you're patient. You're looking for all that color to develop on one side, so that way when you flip, it doesn't just tear your fish apart. And while not totally necessary, a fish spatula is super helpful in these instances because you really want to be able to bend and get under your fish. After about 2 minutes, you're just gonna go ahead and pry underneath. and flip. And don't worry too much about your color. Blackened is more about the seasoning blend rather than the actual like char of your fish. It becomes blackened because the spices get charred, not necessarily the fish, if that makes sense. And after about another 2 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and just remove our first piece. I would much rather your fish have less color and be super moist than more color and be dried out and crumbly. And if your pan kind of looks like mine, it means that your pan really just wasn't hot enough. That's okay. That's why you got lots of fish. First batch, you know, first batch is for you. Second batch, that's for everybody else, you know? See, my pan just wasn't hot enough. It happens. And now all we need to do is just plate it up all nice and mildly fancy. I really like cotija, so I'm just gonna add a little bit to the top. And there you have it. Next up, we have creamy Tuscan chicken pasta, which of course starts with not chicken. You need to start by boiling a pot of water first because that's going to take you the longest, and if you want to get this done in 30 minutes, start with the water. And now for our chicken. You'll need 2 chicken chests, chicken breasts, whatever you want to call them. Layer on a little bit of olive oil, and then you're going to season fairly generously with some garlic powder, onion powder, a little bit of smoked paprika, some dried oregano, and of course salt and pepper. And I'll be honest, for this recipe, it really doesn't need to be super exact. You just want to make sure that your chicken is nice and evenly coated, but if you really do want measurements, they're always going to be down below. And once your chicken is very clearly a different color than when you started, go ahead and set it to the side while we prep the rest. The rest being about 8 cherry tomatoes that were very generously and kindly donated to me by my neighbor. You can cut them in halves, you can cut them in fourths. Mine are a little bit on the bigger side, so I'm going to go with fourths, but it's all personal preference. Whatever makes you happy. Then we're just gonna finely dice a shallot. If you were like me and also hate dicing shallots, let me show you what I find to be the easiest way. Definitely a little bit more work, but it's an easier process, if that makes sense. Just start by cutting off both ends and then slicing it down the middle till you get 2 nice halves. I remove the cores because they can sometimes be a little tricky, but you can leave them. Now you can definitely just cut them long ways like this and then rotate and then finely dice, and that totally works. But if you have a side that is a little more plump, it helps if you just remove the center ring and split it up and do it 2 different times. Does that make sense? Then we'll just cut the butt off some garlic, smash those. We're gonna give those a good strip and then we'll just roughly chop them. And now my pasta water is boiling, so I'm gonna add in a couple generous pinches of salt, followed by about half a box of pasta, like 225 grams. And then I'll just set myself a timer for 12 minutes and wait. Actually, I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna cook the chicken. In an effort to minimize the number of pots and pans you or I have to clean later, I'm using a high-walled saucepan. You could do this in like a 12-inch fry pan, but because the walls aren't as high, it's just gonna be a little bit messy. Once we're at a nice medium-high heat, we're gonna go ahead and add in a little bit of oil, and then we'll just lay in our chicken. And since we're making pasta, pasta spoon rest. After about 2 minutes on that first side, we're just gonna flip and then continue to let it cook. Then after 2 minutes on that side, you'll flip again, then turn your heat down a little bit, and we're gonna add in about 6 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter. And once that butter's nice and melted, you'll just baste your chicken until it's cooked through. And make sure to flip while you're basting so that way it cooks evenly. And make sure to not fling some out of the pan too, because now I gotta clean them. And then once those are finished, you can go ahead and remove and let them rest to the side. And pro tip, if your chicken breasts are a little bit thicker, then you might wanna thin them out, make it a little bit more even. They'll cook quicker. Should have told you that earlier. So sorry about that, my bad. Pasta's done. First, I must verify. Al dente. We're gonna save just a little bit of pasta water. We may or may not need it. It's one of those things where it just depends on how thick your sauce ends up being, but it's good to have. Now we'll just strain it, and now very quickly for our sauce, in the same pan that we cooked our chicken in with all that buttery goodness, on medium, medium-high, in with our garlic and shallots. Make sure you keep it moving so that none of that garlic burns. You just want it to be nice and fragrant and soft. Now we're gonna go ahead and add in our sun-dried tomatoes. You might be thinking, why am I pretending to put sun-dried tomatoes in here? Well, it's because it's the only thing I forgot at the store. So just pretend. Then after about a minute, minute and a half, we're gonna go in with our whole tomatoes. Well, not whole, but the ones. And we're just gonna mush that around a bit. Then once those are nice and broken up, we're gonna add in 2.5 cups of heavy cream, followed by about 1.5 cups of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano. And try to avoid the pre-shredded stuff, and definitely don't use the jarred, like crumbly stuff, because that's not Parmesan. Well, technically that's Parmesan, but not Parmigiano Reggiano. 2 different things. Just go out and treat yourself to a nice Parmesan tomahawk. And then you'll just fold this all together and let it simmer for about 3 to 5 minutes until it's nice and thick. And once it's right about as thick as you want it, go ahead and taste and adjust for salt. I need some. Then add in a nice handful of washed spinach, folding that in very nicely, or meanly too. You could do it meanly if you really wanted to. And then follow that up with your pasta. And all we gotta do is just throw that into a nice bowl plate, top it off with our chicken that's been sliced, drizzle on a little more sauce, because you really can't have enough sauce. And same goes for cheese, and just a little bit of fresh parsley, because we're fancy. And there you have it. And for my personal favorite meal, beef bulgogi bowls, which feels a little misleading because we don't actually start with beef, but that's what I was holding. So I'm just gonna forget that happened because it starts with rice. 2 rice cooker cups worth. And if you don't have a rice cooker, that's totally fine. Down below, I have all the instructions for how to do it on the stove. Same thing. But either way, you wanna start by rinsing in cold water. You just wanna rinse this until your water runs mostly clear. 3 or 4 times is plenty. But then after that, you're just gonna fill it up with a little line that says 2. But in my case, it doesn't say 2. It's just the line in between the 1 and the 3. But it's the 2. Drop it in and start. Now for this next part, you're gonna need a blender. If you have one of those, small blender cup things, just use that because that's plenty. This is overkill, but it'll work. Start with about 1/4 of a peeled Korean pear. If you don't have a Korean pear, you can use a regular pear, or you can even just use like a sweet apple or a kiwi. Both of those will do a similar job and will still taste really good. Then 1/4 of a sweet onion, then 2 cloves of garlic, and about an equal amount of peeled ginger, about 1/4 cup of soy sauce, 1/2 tablespoon of sesame oil, a tablespoon of brown sugar, about 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper, and just a little pinch of salt because there was plenty of salt inside the soy sauce. Then we'll just close it up and blend. If you were using a large blender like me, just be very careful because there may not be enough liquid inside your blender to keep it all cool. So just burst it, burst it. Now we're just going to give it a little taste, make sure we don't need anything. Oh, that's really good. And now in a bowl, go ahead and pour your sauce through a strainer. This is just gonna help remove all that extra pulp because we really don't want it to cook down with our meat, because that can make it a little bit weird in texture. And make sure that you get as much as you possibly can because you don't want to waste any of it. If you really want to be extra, you could just push this through a cheesecloth because 1, it'll be more efficient, and 2, more effective. You're gonna get some pulp that goes through, that's okay. You just don't want, the majority of it. And now for your beef, I'm using thinly sliced brisket, but it really doesn't matter too much what cut of meat you're using as long as it's thinly sliced against the grain. That's important too. Thinly sliced against the grain. You're most likely gonna find this kind of stuff in an Asian market, but I've also seen it at Kroger or Albertsons all the time. Like, they have this stuff. And if you have a butcher close by, you might be able to get it from them too. But basically, as long as it's thinly cut, it'll be fairly tender and delicious. I've got just over a pound of it. I'm gonna move it to a bowl, and I'm just gonna pour over my marinade using another piece of beef to scrape out the inside of this bowl. And I guess technically speaking, you could have just strained the marinade into this bowl, but I didn't. And now using your hands, you're just gonna go ahead and massage it all in. Make sure each piece is nicely coated, just like this. Your meat should do a pretty good job of absorbing all that liquid because we made just the right amount. Now, before we cook our beef, we're just gonna wanna go ahead and cut up the other 1/2 of our sweet onion. And if you're thinking, man, Ian, that's not 1/2 a sweet onion, that's 1/4 of a sweet onion. Well, you'd be correct because I already cut up 1/2 of that sweet onion. I forgot to press record, but I felt dirty and cheap to just skip over it. So here we are. And you're probably thinking that, yeah, these are typically mixed in with your meat ahead of time, but because we're not letting it sit and marinate overnight, I know these are gonna take a little bit longer to cook down, so I just wanna keep them separate. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cook this on nonstick, but you can cook it in stainless steel, carbon steel, whatever you prefer. Either way, you start by adding in a little bit of food. And we're just gonna add in our onions. We're just gonna spread those out so they cook down as quick as possible. We're on medium-high heat, by the way. I don't know if I said that. Are you impressed? Me neither. And after about 5 to 7 minutes, your onion should be fairly translucent. Oh. Sick, rice is done. We can go ahead and add in our meat. Now, if your meat does not fit in your pan, go ahead and do this in batches. It's okay. The worst thing you're gonna do is overcrowd your pan and steam your meat. Nobody in the history of the world has ever been like, you know what I love? Steamed beef. Please, someone fact check me on that. I would really be curious to know. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna toss about 1/2 of our meat in there. We're gonna spread it out and let it cook. And then you know what? After the second batch, we'll just add it all together, mix it all up, and then the onions will be mixed with the beef. Sick. And then after about another 5-ish minutes, your pieces should have a good little color to them, a little bit of char. You can go ahead and just remove it. And if you did this in batches like me, we're gonna go ahead and just drop in our next batch. And then, like I said, we're just gonna mix that all back together, and we're done. And now all there's left to do is just plate it up with a little bit of rice, our bulgogi, and a little bit of sesame seeds. And there you have, wait, hold please. Always forget green onions. And there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching and staying to the end of the video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed. Here's a picture of me as a baby, and I'll see you next week.